All right, folks, welcome to Nino's Corner.tv, Fluff Tube Edition. I'm with 𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗠𝗶𝗹. Is that I say that correctly, Ben?
Yeah, you're good, brother.
All right, with who are you? You're with One America's Voice,
Real America's Voice. Yeah.
Real
So
America's Voice. That's right.
I run my
But you're
organization called Frontline America, and then I do a show called Law and Border on Real America's Voice.
right, and you're right in it. You're in the thick of it, and there's no person I trust more than to bring me the scoop on what's happening on the front line than you. There's only a few people that put their life on the line or boots on the ground, and you're one of them. So I commend you for that, dude. You're a real patriot, and you're bringing real news. Um, let's get started
Thanks,
here,
brother.
man. I live on the border. I'm here. I hear whispers. I grew up on both sides of the border. I was into the criminal element when I was younger, so that's how I know a lot of people on both sides of the border. I understand the mentality here. And I've been saying this for a long time, man. Things are going to pop off on the not just the border, but within America. I think I've lived through the cartel wars in Ciudad Juarez, El Paso. I think this is what's getting ready to come is going to put them all to shame. I think what's getting ready to come is going to be severe. Ben, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I was just actually down in El Paso, over in Sunland Park, riding with Border Patrol, doing some ops with Four Star, and just a couple weeks ago, and it's crazy. I mean, first off, what a difference a month and a half makes, from President Trump from Joe Biden to President Trump. We saw the worst invasion our country's ever seen. We saw the largest human migration, I believe, in world history over those last 4 years. And all of a sudden, boom, it stops. And all that, the only difference is the policies of putting America first versus Joe Biden putting America last and the Democrats. And so we are seeing a significant shift. And now all of the resources, my show Law and Border, now we're embedding with ICE. We're going in after these 15 million plus illegals that were invited in. And this is, it's just the beginning of restoring America. What we see on the border is interesting because riding with Border Patrol, they saw the lowest 3 weeks in recorded history, in President Trump's first 3 weeks, and now we're seeing some of the lowest numbers, from 2,500 encounters in El Paso down to under 100 per day, from 11,000 encounters across the entire border to a
Hold
couple
on, we're
hundred.
we're still having 100 a day in El
Yeah,
Paso.
under 100 was the last. It was 80 the last day I was there, and
Okay,
that.
so let me
Go
ask
ahead.
you this. So with that being said, we're obviously cutting that. We're severing their arteries, their veins to come into America. They're going to have to resort to tunnels and all that. We spoke about that earlier. Um, so with that being said, that's a major, major hit to the cartels.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and
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 so,
and on top of that, so what you see right now, President Trump declaring six of the major cartels in Mexico terrorist organizations, along with 𝗬𝗏𝗯𝗃 and the couple others, the MS-13. All of this is going directly at the heart of this, and so what I'm seeing right now is a shift. Basically, it's an internal focus by the cartels. So they're mobilizing internally, they're strategizing internally, and we're already seeing major violence hitting some cities like Tijuana. My brother Oscar's down there. He left all over the city. You're seeing the violence starting to pop off in Mexico, and it's a direct result of this socialist president of Mexico, who's actually doing some things to basically stop the tariffs that President Trump was threatening. Now,
here's the
she doesn't
confusion.
actually want to stop this, but she definitely doesn't want the 25% tariff that President Trump was threatening.
Right. The 25, and that just went into effect today, correct?
Yeah, it's supposed to. I think that that's it's what from what I'm hearing. Basically, that's why Mexico's doing what they're doing to prevent that.
And this is an armored vehicle in Mexico by what? The cartels on this one right here?
Yeah, so
This
they have multiple generations of cartel vehicles. These basically rolling armored personnel vehicles, and these are they're, for lack of a better term, they're tanks. I mean, they're designed for warfare. These are basically military style organizations that are operating on the Mexico side. And think about this: Joe Biden and the border policies of the last 4 years just pumped $100 billion into these organizations, from the Gulf cartels to the Zetas, the CGNG, the Sinaloas. These guys have $100 billion more to spend. So what do they use that money on? It's arming themselves. They are ready for war. A lot of these guys, they in many areas they have better arsenals than the actual Mexican military, and so it's going to be bloody. It's going to be extremely bloody on the Mexico side, and I believe it also that's going to carry over because every major city in America has a major cartel influence in it now as well. So we're going to see that violence on the U.S. side as well, not just on the border, but interior, New York, Chicago. I think we're going to see that hitting everywhere.
So I've been talking about this for a long time about cartel warfare. Like this is getting ready to pop off. What have you heard about 𝗬𝗏𝗂𝗏𝗏? Have you heard anything? I mean, you're saying that Tijuana already has, heads being displayed in public and stuff like that. Is that happening in 𝗬𝗏𝗂𝗏 too? Because I have not heard anything on that end.
I haven't. Nope, I haven't heard anything directly out of Juarez, and it really comes down to where where the cartel lines cross. So a lot of the violence we're seeing down outside of Tijuana and over into Tecate and over into Arizona on the Arizona side, we're warring factions within the Sinaloa cartel. A lot of this has to do with El Chapo El Mayo and the sons of El Chapo, the Chapitos, and these guys battling it out. And so some of it's turf warfare. But what I'm sensing in Juarez, especially when I was there, and the quiet we're hearing in Juarez right now and in Opera is the calm before the storm. These guys are, reorganizing, gearing up. They're internalizing their focus rather than because they're stopped on the border. Now they're still moving people across. They're still moving drugs across. Most of that now is coming across in vehicles or under tunnels. They are doing some stuff out in the deserts, but it looks like they're adjusting their strategies. And these guys are masters of that. I mean, the cartel, in some ways, I definitely would. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing their tactics, but it is, if you want to learn warfare tactics, guerrilla warfare tactics, these guys are experts at that. By the way, they're also partnered up with Hezbollah and Hamas. That's where Juarez, they got their tunnel building technology from Hezbollah, 30 years ago. And so you've got Islamic jihadist factions that are tied with these guys. The Solis cartel out of Venezuela is directly tied to Hamas and Hezbollah. Working directly for the Venezuelan government. Now we've got, millions of Venezuelans, some of those tied to the Venezuelan government on U.S. soil. So all of that happening. But, Juarez specifically, I got the sense that there's two things happening when I was there. There was a lot of frustration by the cartels. So the foot soldiers on the ground, these guys only make their money when they move people or drugs across. And you could really sense they were getting frustrated. The guys at the top, they're already rolled, they're already bankrolled. And they're strategizing and looking at what they're going to do. You're going to see some, internal factions fighting some of these little guys that are just trying to stay alive, keep their drug habits paid for, and the rest of it. You'll see some fighting on that. But I think the major fighting is going to, again, be internal or directed towards the Mexican government and or counter factions of the cartels. One thing I also know is every layer of Mexican society is impacted or corrupted by the cartels. So whether that's your local DAs or judges, to your local municipal governments or police, all the way up to the president and Congress and everybody down. And so even if we see movement where we take 29 of these, the main guys, and we extradite them to the United States, a lot of that will be redirecting resources to choosing winners in the cartel battle. So they're going to be picking who's going to come out of this on top. They're not going to, the Mexican government is not going to wipe out the cartels. Now, if we actually set our special forces in there, we could, whether or not we actually end up doing that. My sense is they're going to reorganize. They're going to give turf to ones. Basically, they want peace in Mexico. And the only way you get that is if you give the cartels what they want in certain areas. And
right. So let me ask you this. 𝗧𝗏𝗏, we know that she was put in there by the cartels, globalist puppet, whatever.
Yep.
She's in a rock and a hard place now. So, they installed her, and now here she is having to take orders from not only the cartels, but Trump, trying to keep a fine balance, keep everybody happy. What do you see going on with her? There's a massive tug of war for her. So basically Trump is, and I believe that they've already sent in troops to start training the military to take out the cartels, right? So essentially we're teaching them how to fight themselves, which they're probably going to just use against us. But that's just my opinion. But
if you mean,
but this makes Mexico like this is a very,
perfect example.
I mean, this could be just as bad by all means.
Yeah. Well, and that's why these guys are just as ruthless as any terrorist organization on the planet. They'll dismember. I mean, if you want to, I can't even watch the stuff anymore. But you want to be sick to your stomach, watch some cartel videos, bodies while the guys are still alive. It's just as evil as any terror organization. Yeah. So to 𝗬𝗏𝗯𝗶, she's in a tough spot now. There's no question about it. She's controlled by the communist globalists, as you know, this unholy alliance between communist globalists, the cartels, the NGOs, all of these organizations that are basically, it's all for profit. It's power and profit. And so, but none of what she's doing right now is what she desires to do.
No.
I think she's trying to balance stopping the tariffs and keeping the cartel factions that she's aligned with happy. And so some of that is, you know, portraying, hey, we're gonna present it as if we're giving you guys up, but in reality, there's underhanded stuff going on under the table saying, but we promise in the end we'll give you guys back.
Right. So what do you think Trump's game plan here is? I think he wants to go in and wipe everyone out. Do you think maybe he's promising Claudia Sheinbaum, hey, look it, we'll outfit you, we'll get you once this stuff pops off, we'll send down our troops, you'll be protected, we'll get things done, we'll take them all out ourselves. I would imagine that's probably the offer.
That's the only reason why we saw the extraditions we saw last week. There's no way in hell that would have happened unless President Trump has already got boots on the ground, special forces in position to protect these guys. You know, whether or not they're even good guys or bad guys, that's a hard thing. In Mexico, you really don't know. We're starting to have that gray area in America, but in Mexico, it's all gray. You know, you don't know who's good, who's bad, who's on your side, who's not. And it really depends on the day. You know, some of that, for people to understand this too, a lot of these guys, they don't all start out this way. You know, it's the stories that you get told are they come to you first and just bring you a big a briefcase of cash and say, hey, we want you to work for us. And if that doesn't work, then they say, we want you to work for us or your whole family. And so, you know, that mentality is what has controlled Mexico for 40 years. So there's no question the only way that we actually deal with the cartels in a long-term, you know, focus or in a long-term sense is if America goes in with our special forces and actually wipes these guys out and stops the vacuum. So what we have right now is we're taking the heads off the snakes, but now you're creating a power vacuum, and you've got thousands of little foot soldiers that are right behind them that all they know is violence, all they know is this lifestyle, and they're looking
and
to
they
power
don't
grab
care
up.
about civilian casualties. They do.
At
That's what people
all.
need to think about.
No, in fact, that's a tool. That's a useful tool for them. You know, it's a terrorist tool. So how do we get people to say, you know, stop it? We don't want to deal with this anymore. A bunch of civilians, and so there's no doubt about it that those conversations are being had as we speak down there as well.
So what about no better place to do it than in America and put mud all over Trump's face, right? I mean, because you know, you think Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, all these states are controlled by the cartels.
That's right. All these protests you see going across America, all of this anti-ICE protest, this is all coordinated by La Razas, by these leftist communist groups that are all tied back to the cartels. All of these guys are tied back. You go to Chicago. Chicago's been run by the cartels for years. That's where 𝗬𝗶𝗹 𝗠𝗏𝗃 and central 𝗬𝗏𝗃 and the idea of sanctuary policies actually came from. That's all tied back to the cartel. So we've already got those terrorist factions on our soil. We've already got them shutting down our streets, in LA and across America. That's going to continue to rise. But I think you're right. I think we're going to see a shift from style tactics to a more violent approach. Yeah, that's going to be coming if we don't just squash it. And this is really what this all comes down to is it's moving in positions of strength. And the only way you deal with these bad guys, the only thing they know is power. And the only way you deal with them is you bring more power and you shut them down. And the sad thing in America is we've become such a weak, neutered, pathetic culture, excuse my language, over the last several decades that most people don't have the appetite for what we're talking about, what it's going to take to actually shut these guys down. And that's where we're at right now. We're in a limbo between what has to happen in order to actually defeat these guys and the reality of what that actually looks like and people's ability to stomach what that actually looks like. When you use military style tactics, you're talking about, wiping people out. When that starts hitting the news, and that's what the leftist news is looking for, all of this stuff. We're picking up some bad guys, we're deporting some bad guys, but all they're looking for is this moment to be able to point to and create the violence in America and on the south of the border. But back to the question, all of that's happening. The biggest thing, so last week when we picked up 29 of these guys, we extradited them. There's a reason why a lot of the Mexican officials were in America that day, and I believe it was to protect themselves from the violence that's going to come back at them. But the biggest thing in all of that, to unwind this web, is to get to the money. We've got to go after the financiers of all these guys and find out where all that money is going to every single politician, not just in Mexico, but also in the United States, and go after these guys with the justice system, with Bondi, with 𝗂𝗃𝗏. Now we actually have the pieces in place, if they're willing to actually do it. I believe Cash is. I really pray Bondi
we're getting
is.
ready to see a civil war in Mexico, man, first.
Oh, yeah, no question. No question.
I mean, that's what's going to hit first, and then it's going to bleed over into America. Hegseth right now is sending 3,000 troops plus armored stryker vehicles to the border. I'm like, that's not to stop illegal immigration. That's war.
Yeah.
Dude, do you see? And they've been outfitted with military grade weaponry, man. Not only from us, but China. These guys are ready to rock and roll. These guys are not messing around. How bad do you see it getting here? I mean, shoulder rockets. I mean, what do you see, Ben, in your mind? What do you see happening here, especially on the border?
Well, if we unleash our assets, our war fighters to actually do what they're trained to do, these guys have no chance. I mean, on a civilian population, on a local law enforcement population, the cartels win. Against our army, against our military, against in particular our special forces, these guys are wiped out. It's how much of that we do, how much of this is diplomatic. I see it getting violent. I see it getting violent first, as you said, in Mexico, then in the United States, and then it really becomes a chess match between how much violence are they willing to put up with, how much death are they willing to invite on themselves, endure, and versus how much we're willing to take as a society to say we want to wipe these guys out. I think most law-abiding Mexicans have been waiting for this for an awfully long time. They're sick of being controlled by the cartels. They're sick of what that means for their communities. But at the same time, there's also a financial impact to this, because you're going to wipe out a lot of the money streams for a lot of people. And it's what we saw in El Salvador. I think Bukele is a perfect example of how you actually deal with this. You have to come with overwhelming force immediately. You don't just go after the bad guys. You go after the bad guys' families, because they're all involved with this as well. And you do it without apology. Bukele, I think that's if we're going to do it, that's the way to do it. Most countries don't have the will to do that. Whether or not we do at this point, with all this, the social justice tree hugging lefties out there, is yet to be seen.
What do you see happening that will ignite America to go in and clean house? Do you think it's something that won't be publicly seen? I mean, we're probably in there already taking people down.
We're in there. There's no question we're in there already. I don't think that operation with the extraditions happened without our involvement, our direct involvement.
So we're in there.
There's no question.
No question. So 𝗬𝗃𝗏𝗂𝗃 has allowed Trump to already place his chess pieces within our country, and we're making moves right now.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
This is my answer. This is how I see it. I'm not saying I have.
Right. We don't know. It's hypothetical.
But based on evidence and based on the amount of time I've been doing this, no question about it. We're already in there. We're already training, and we're probably already in direct action against these guys.
And do you think Trump's waiting on one? I almost feel like he's baiting them. Like, yeah, do it, test me. Like one 𝗀𝗃𝗏𝗏 camarena, one bad move on their part, we're in. We're all in.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing that with ICE too. You look at the deportation strategy. A lot of that has been. You look at we got to get rid of 15 million people. Well, you don't do that picking up 100 people a day. But I think part of that is we're doing this to have the left overreact, so that then we can justify then a larger move. And I think that's happening on the U.S. side. I think the exact same thing's happening on the Mexico side. And all of this is strategic from a branding standpoint. I mean, it's sad to say it, but all of this is how can we present this in the media in a way that people will side with us and we'll get public support, and public opinion will be on our side. And sometimes, unfortunately, you have to have that. So I think that all of that's playing at the same time.
Right here, I'm just going to show this real quick to the people because just to show the cartel type of tactics and warfare. Father killed after driver driving over explosive device on his own ranch.
Yeah.
I would expect them to start putting this stuff in cities, Ben. I mean that's what I expect. I mean, the Texas Agricultural Commissioner is urging farmers, ranchers, and agricultural workers who have traveled to Mexico to operate near the border to exercise extreme caution. So this guy's truck, I don't know if you saw the pictures. There should be a picture in here somewhere, but his whole truck just bam blew up. It hit an IED
Yeah.
on a road on his ranch. So what I'm saying is this is part of the warfare here. They're not going to play by the rules. They're going to make this
No.
as ugly as possible.
Yeah. Well, again, you're dealing with lawless people, and so that's always the battle is when we're following the rules, the Constitution, the laws of our land. That's why declaring these guys cartel or terrorist organizations is critical in our ability to use different tactics than you would on the civilian population. You have to do that because that's the enemy that we're fighting. But you're right. What they're going to do is you can't, in theory, our government can't do some of the things they're willing to do. And I think you're right. You're going to start seeing that, whether that's just on along the border to impact border patrol. But I think you're right. We'll probably start seeing that depending on, this is all hypothetical, depending on the response. It's going to be a back and forth, and I think everyone just needs to understand we're just getting into this. Be as prepared as you possibly can, and that's for everything. I mean, whether that's jihadists, Muslim terrorists on our streets that are already here that we've invited in. We know the last 4 years we've invited more terrorists in than in recorded history. Where those cells are, what their plans are, whether they're coordinating with these guys or not, whether they're all independent. There's a lot of potential danger out there. But at the same time, I thank God we've got Trump in there now versus who we had in there before, because all of this.
Yeah, but we're going on offense.
Pains.
This is offense now.
This is offense, so you're going to get a defensive response. So people just need to be prepared.
That's the only way to fight these guys. Go at them now. Go all in and go fast. They're still in shell shock. A lot of the politicians, they cannot believe they lost.
Yeah.
And then they're reeling back. So now here we come with the barrage of punches. And I'm going to say, the whole terrorist organization thing, that's a broad net that can scoop up a lot of politicians that took donations from these organizations as well. You know as well as I do. El Paso, New Mexico, everywhere. There's a lot of politicians that have done this stuff.
When it's all shaken out, no question about it. We got politicians in America. I think about right there, in El Paso, there are a lot of people that I will not be surprised at all if they are involved with this. And again, the question is, can we use our justice system to go after them and use, with these rules of engagement?
I think that's going to be something that's, when you're dealing with a terrorist organization, if you're dealing with a terrorist organization, you don't have the rights anymore. You go to military style.
Well, I love that we reopened. We're reusing Guantanamo, flying these guys down there. And I personally, I am 100%, as long as our government is putting America first. Some of this stuff, I think it's critical that the American civilian population doesn't know everything that's happening. I think in part, you have to go in, as you said, you have to go in with overwhelming force. You have to take these guys out. And in some ways, the less some of this stuff we know about, the better in the long-term strategic approach to this. So,
Ben, I want to say thank you for joining me, man. I know you're busy today. Thanks for taking time out to join me on Nino's Corner.
Hey, it's my honor. By the way, one other thing, the NGOs that were involved with this, they're going to be tied to all this as well. And we're just at the beginning of unraveling their network. So anybody who's in any city that's tied to any of these communist organizations, whether it's Catholic Charities or Lutheran Social Services or any of these organizations, my request to you is infiltrate these organizations, get as much intel as you can, whether that's politicians or organizations, and get that out there, whether it's to Nino or to me or to anybody out there that can share it.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate you coming on, brother.
My pleasure, man. Anytime.